Hi everyone. I'm just poking around like my feet. So you may be wondering where I've been for the last, since like November 10th. Oh, just a second. Okay, now that I've taken off my uniform, yeah, you really have to be in like 30-degree weather to be wearing that because it's got a Sherpa fuzzy lining on the inside, and I'd have to be dying in the middle of a snowstorm to put it on, really. So, where I've been, around November 10th, we had a bad storm, and the wind was blowing in pretty hard, and my left ear stopped working. I couldn't hear a thing, and I tried all the usual tricks, like peroxide and hot water, and putting the heating pad on it, and it wasn't clearing out. When I flicked my outer ear, it would sound like a drum. And then, so I went to urgent care about 2 days after it started, and they said it looked like since I have Sjogren's, and it's called Sjogren's, by the way, not, if you ever watched Dr. House, he said Sjogren's. That's totally wrong. And so I figured it might have been something connecting my my eustachian tubes, to my ears, because I was having swelling under this saliva gland, and so I finally went to urgent care 2 days after it started, and she said, yeah, you could have salivary stones, but it could be an infection too. So they put me on, I can't remember the antibiotic. I think it started with a D. Anyway, it was a broad spectrum antibiotic that contained like amoxicillin and something else. And I experienced something I'd never experienced before. I was totally not depressed at all for the whole time I was taking it. And then about 3 days before I was to run out of the antibiotic, we had another storm, and my right ear stopped working. And so I just sent a message to my doctor saying, do you want me to go back to urgent care, or do you want me to, do you want to send in a prescription for a steroid like I did in the spring before when I had the same problem? He's going nuts, I don't know why. So she sent in that, and I got on the steroid, which also had an effect on depression. I was feeling quite great for a long time, and about 4 days after starting it, the stuff started letting go, and it wasn't as severe as it first started. I could start hearing things, and by the end of all the treatments, I was okay. And then we had another storm. This gets to be a continuous story. So forget about my ears. I ended up getting everything taken care of. It ended up working out, and I got quite clear hearing back. Probably clearer than I've had in about a year or so. So the one that happened the spring before probably didn't get totally cleared up, and I wasn't hearing too well the whole time for a year. No, almost a year. And now that I think about it, that was around when I was in the hospital for my C-spine revision surgery. So you would think that antibiotic they gave me would have cleared it up, but I guess not. So anyway, another thing that happened during the time that I was gone was on December 27th. What is he after? Hang on, he's got something plastic. I'm not taking him to the vet because he wants to play around with some plastic and chew it up and swallow it. He has this thing about some kinds of plastic where he'll just, like my stepdad gave me two bags that hold, you know, blankets, and they're expandable bags, and they have a clear plastic on the front of it. And I didn't know at the time, but he's got this thing about chewing up plastic. I thought he only liked rubber, you know, like the cords that go to charge your phones and stuff like that. And he chewed up the little rubber things that go on the shower curtain liner, so I cut him off so he wouldn't swallow them. But he's got a weird thing for plastic. He's just a dork. You know, cats, dogs, they're all the same. Anyway, so on December 27th, it was my 32nd anniversary of since they amputated my foot due to synovial sarcoma cancer. So it wasn't like I was depressed or anything. It's just that I had come down off the antibiotics and the steroids, because I ended up having to take 2 courses of antibiotics, 1 course of steroids for it to finally get fixed. And for, you know, during that whole time, I would get where if I moved too fast, I'd be nauseated. If I would like leaned down, I'd be nauseated. If I leaned back too fast, the whole thing, it was really, I've had ear infections before, and they didn't feel like what this feel like. They didn't, I've never heard that kind of a sound, and the PA at urgent care did that thing, flicking my outer ear, and I'd never heard that kind of a sound all the times that I've had an ear infection or ear problems before. So I was out sick for a long time, and not able to do any of these videos. And along the way, I got some really bright lights that are on. 2 of them are on right now. I have 3. And so, and then I borrowed 2 lamps from my stepdad, and I'll give those back eventually when I can afford to buy a couple of fixtures to put them in instead of, you know, they're in regular lamps now over there, and they could be better than in a fixture that would aim at the ceiling or aim behind me, so that I have to avoid the direct light because of my glasses. Most people use a ring light, but if I did that, you'd see a great big, you wouldn't see my eyes, you'd see a ring. Just like when I look up, you can see the glare. Well, that's what would happen if I used a ring light. So I ended up getting some extremely bright lights, LED lights that are 1,300 lumens, and I got 3 of them on sale at Christmas time. So, and then at the beginning of January, I got sick again. We had another storm. I'm really susceptible to these storms, and I live in Reno. And so where I'm at right now is 4,400 feet above sea level. And if you travel 35 miles west, you'll reach the lowest point in the mountains that you can get through on a road, and that's at over 10,000 feet. And the mountains around it are quite high. One of the highest mountains I think it's the highest mountain in the continental United States, in the lower 48, is in around Mammoth Mountain. It's called Mount Whitney. So when the storms come up, they hit these mountains and they get stuck, which is good because they dump all the snow and rain, and that's why California ends up being as this side of the mountains we have high desert. So they get stuck there, and I've watched, like, I can put up the barometer on the WeatherBug app on my phone, and I can set it to play, and it'll go play over, like a 8-hour period, and you can see it just going back and forth, and that stuff really kills me. My fibromyalgia gets bad, my Sjogren's get bad, so I ended up with 2 ear infections. Both of these saliva glands were infected, swollen, painful, and that took quite a long time to heal up. And then once it did heal up, we had another extreme storm, and I just got really bad fibromyalgia and had to treat it with high doses of citrulline malate. And so I finally started getting better about a week ago, and I've been trying to get things reorganized and back together so that I can start doing videos again. But also, so in 1988, this is part of my story. Okay, I'm starting in the middle. In 1988, I had surgery in November on my foot to, exploratory surgery to try to find out what it was that was causing me so much pain and why there was a lump on my foot. Excuse me. So that doctor opened it up, and then, what was it? It was the day before, and then I went back the day before Thanksgiving to find out the diagnosis, and it was, my mom drove me down there because my foot was, still healing and everything. Still had stitches in. So went back to the doctor, 33 miles from here. And my mom took me, and no one was in the office. It was just the receptionist, and the doctor was in her office, and my mom and me. And I went back there with the doctor, and she started telling me, about what she did during the surgery and how she took out a piece of a lump that was in my foot, and she sent it to the lab here, and she didn't believe the results. So she took another sample that she saved and sent it to a friend she had in Presidio, San Francisco, who was, he was like one of the tops in his field. The whole area down there by Stanford, California, is really the best, cancer people you could go see and everything. So that's where it went, and came back as synovial sarcoma. And she told me, that I was only the 9th person in the United States to ever have synovial sarcoma, and the very first person to have it in my foot. So, and she went into telling me that I'll probably end up losing my foot, and I did, and because it was so widespread by then, because the Army opened up an encapsulated tumor, and that allowed the tumor to spread, and that's why over the year between when they opened it up and when she opened it up, things got so severe, and I lost so much weight that by the time of my amputation, I was listed as emaciated and needing, a feeding tube or whatever they could do to help me gain weight. So, at the time I was also, every morning when I'd go to work, I'd leave home, I'd have breakfast, leave home, and I drove 50 miles to work every day. And I would stop at a rest stop along the way, and I'd vomit because of how, my body was reacting to the cancer in such a severe way, trying to get rid of any toxins and stuff. So then they amputated my foot, and I had to start things all over again. And that was 1988. So it's been 32 years, and I did not have chemotherapy. I refused chemotherapy, and I refused radiation treatments, because when I looked into how effective those things were at treating the type of cancer that I had, you know, chemotherapy was something like 0.03% effectiveness. And since only 9 people had it before me, 4 of them refused chemotherapy and the other 4 accepted it. And out of each group, 2 people died from the cancer. So I was thinking, you know, I'm already so sick that if they're going to give me something that could kill me, and they could only guarantee, the only guarantee he would give me is that it would destroy 50% of my heart muscle. So I said, no, I'm not taking it. And they expected me to never make it past 50 years old because of how long I had cancer, which was from around the time of 14 and to the time I was 28, so 14 years, somewhere between 14 years and 16 years estimated that I had the tumor growing in my foot. And I have pictures that I found, you know, from the PET scans that show how far it was, how big it was, and how far it had spread through my foot before they amputated it. And funny thing is, the first thing I asked was, how much does a foot weigh? Well, so they just so happen to do all that stuff where they send things to the lab, you know, and the lab has to keep track of everything. So they actually weighed it, and it was a little over 3 pounds. So I lost 3 more pounds in the process. You couldn't tell it now, because now I'm 5'9" and weigh 220, and I have trouble getting below 220. But that's because of narcolepsy. And I'll cover that. I guarantee you I will cover that in another video. And it'll be why narcoleptics get fat. And so anyway, it was a thing where I had to go back and forth between Reno and Stanford, close to 300 miles, every couple of weeks for the first 6 months, so they could check on me, you know. And before the surgery, I had a full body MRI, and I had a full body PET scan and a full body CAT scan, because they were looking for any trace that the tumor might show up. And we ended up finding out that the tumor in my foot did not show up on X-rays, MRI, or CT scan. A CT scan is just a really fast set of thousands of pictures that by X-ray anyway. So the only way that this type of cancer shows up is when you do PET scans. So no wonder it was missed for so long. Not to mention there were so many doctors that didn't even look at my foot. I'd go in and say, there's a lump on my foot and it's extremely painful. Number one, they wouldn't believe me that it was painful, because they ended up telling me I have a terrible pain face. In other words, you could press on the tumor and I'd be smiling and telling them, yeah, that's killing me, and they wouldn't believe me. So part of it was that, and part of it was that it just wasn't a thing to get a soft tissue tumor in your foot. Plenty of people had bone tumors in their foot and their bones would break, but apparently I was the first to have a soft tissue tumor in the foot. And one of the good things that came out of it is when they did amputate my foot, the lab took the parts of the cancer that they could get to and put them on slides and sent them all around the world. So at least it helped raise awareness of synovial sarcoma. And then not long after my amputation, an actor whose name I can't remember, I should have wrote it down, but so what? An actor ended up having synovial sarcoma in his knee. Well, they got the tumor out and did reconstruction of the knee, and he was able to keep walking and everything. So it wasn't losing a limb or losing part of your body like it was for me, you know. And it's, to me, it's a celebration that I've lived so long. And so December 27th is always an important day for me. And, you know, it just so happened that December 28th was my mom's birthday. So every year after celebrating that I was still alive, we'd have my mom's birthday. And my mom died 5 years ago. So that's the next thing I'm telling you about, is in the last 5 years, I have gone through some rough stuff, okay? And you could start with, let's see, my stepdad's mom died after her husband died 2 years earlier, and then she just didn't, you know, pull out of it and get back to normal again. And she ended up breaking a hip, and when you're 80 years old and you break a hip, the chances are that you're not going to make it, because it's just such a shock to the body. So we lost her, and then the next thing that happened was my wife Evelyn had a heart attack and ended up with congestive heart failure. And so she was in the hospital for the better part of 4 months. And during those 4 months, one day I was stepping off the bus to go visit her with my left foot, you know, the real one, and I cracked a bone inside of it, apparently. But I kept walking on it, you know, what the hell. I'm always in pain anyway, because when you wear a prosthesis, it's like putting a clamp on your body. That's the only way it'll hold on. So, and one day I even asked the guy who makes my legs, how many people, what did he think was the number of people that he treats that are in so much pain all the time just because of the prosthesis? And he said 95% of all the people there have to take some type of pain medicine because the prosthesis is so painful, wearing it, walking in it, or even on your arm, the suction and the pressure put on what's on the residual limb. They call it the residual limb. People who are amputees call it a stump. So it's very painful no matter what you do, you know. And only about 5% of the people have enough pain resistance normally that they don't need medication to stop the pain or help them live with the prosthesis. So, and then after Evelyn had a heart attack and she finally got out of the hospital and trying to get back to normal, my mom went in one day and had a needle biopsy, and turned out she had breast cancer. So we went through all of that with her, and you know, she would come to me for advice on treatments and everything, but then turn around and, you know, I told her that chemotherapy on her type of cancer didn't work You know, it was just as bad as the one that they were trying to give me, you know, with a 0.03% success rate. You know, any other drug that has that low of a success rate, they would take off the market. But because they can scare people into thinking that they're going to die without the chemotherapy, people end up saying, yes, I'll do the chemotherapy. And that's what my mom did. And they ended up having to stop the treatments halfway through because she was too sick to handle anymore. And then, so Mom died within a year after them stopping the chemotherapy. And they said that the doctor, my stepdad, saw the doctor in the hospital one day, and she came up to him and told him that she was changing her specialty because she realized how bad chemotherapy is for people. And she admitted to my stepdad that Mom probably died because the chemotherapy made her so weak that the cancer came back and spread to all of her organs and her brain. So that happened. And then the next person was, my wife died in April 2019. She was in a group home, and right before she went to the group home, she got bronchitis, and that affected the mitral valve in her heart, and basically the mitral valve wasn't working anymore. So someone in that group home attacked her, and this person shouldn't have been in the group home anyway. And the result of it was Evelyn had a heart attack, and that night between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. she died. And I felt her come by and say goodbye to me, and I got panicky trying to find her. You know, I thought, because she had told me this person attacked her, but she didn't say she was going to the hospital or anything. And so I was contacting her children and trying to find out where she was, and her youngest son found out that she was in the hospital, and they ignored her do not resuscitate order and put her on a machine. And when we got there the next day, you know, we told them flat out, she's not supposed to be on a machine, and we'd rather you take her off the machine. And they said, well, she's going to die, and you know, since her orders say that it's okay to leave her on a machine for 3 days, they wanted to do that. So they did, and her youngest son lived in Austin, Texas, so he had to fly up here, and everyone went to the hospital, said goodbye to her, and he was the last one. And he flew up, he got here at midnight, he saw her at 1 in the morning, 1 a.m., and she passed away at 1:58 in the morning. So that, that, it's so hard to talk about it. That put me out of sorts for a long time. You know, it's been, this April it'll be 2 years, and I'm normally clinically depressed anyway, on antidepressants and everything, and then to lose someone like that, to lose my wife all of a sudden was, never expected that it would happen, but things are inevitable sometimes. And then, last February, only a couple weeks before I went in for my C-spine revision surgery, where they took out some old hardware that they put in 2005 because a screw had broken off and was in the tissues of my throat, making my throat swell a lot of times.